5-phase map of the journey, not 3 like Van Gennep or Campbell, but 5.
And in fact, Jonathan, was it Jonathan on a interview did a map? So I thought I'd just preempt.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Jonathan, somebody over there?
Was it Jonathan Ellaby? Your lovely interview with him.
Okay.
Was it?
Great.
Yeah.
Yep, got it. Yep.
Yeah.
So there's 2 analogies that we use to help people understand what the descent to soul is. And one is it's a journey into Soul Canyon. You just showed us that map. And another one is that it's the analogy of what a caterpillar goes through on its way to becoming a butterfly or a moth. So let's use, maybe I'll do both kind of simultaneously.
Weave
the
it.
first, sorry?
Weave it.
Yeah, weave it, yeah. So the first phase is like, it's like you're in the forest on more or less flat land and you're heading towards the Grand Canyon, and you know there's the Grand Canyon out there somewhere, but you're on your way through the forest towards the canyon rim. And that corresponds to, in the human descent to soul, the preparation time. And there's all kinds of ways to prepare oneself. And it's mostly, for us Western people, it's psycho-spiritual preparation. In particular, we are doing what I call cultivating the 4 facets of innate human wholeness, because we're all born with these 4 facets. At Animus, we map them onto the 4 cardinal directions, which is one of nature's universal templates. And my book, Wild Mind, goes into great detail about these 4 facets of human wholeness. We're all born with the seeds of them, but contemporary society tends to suppress the development of all 4 of them, especially 2 of them. The 2 that have to do with our capacity for feeling and experience kinship with the world, and the facet that has to do with our deep imagination, or the muse, or our fascination with the undoing of things and the darkness. And that most contemporary humans need a lot of preparation with that if the descent to soul is going to go well for them. It even can be life-threatening, and both psychologically and physically, the descent, if you're not well prepared. We also need to develop further our capacity to heal ourselves psychologically, because we're going to have to depend on ourselves primarily during a descent. And the practices for doing these things, cultivating wholeness, which in shorthand we call holing, and the capacity to heal ourselves, which is to say to embrace and love the parts of ourselves that we call inner protectors, who are trying to keep us safe. And like the number one thing they want to keep us safe from is the descent to soul. So they'll sabotage it if we don't know how to love them. And that's what self-healing is, not getting rid of any part of ourselves, including our inner critics, but loving them.
I loved how you used in terms of in Wild Mind, the loyal soldiers. I love that analogy of that.
Yeah, the loyal soldiers are one category, one of 4. It's actually part of one of 4 categories of inner protectors. We have lots of them. We have inner addicts and escapists, and we have wounded children and outcasts, and we have the shadow. And we have our inner critics, such as the loyal soldier or the lion tamer and so forth. We have a whole
a whole bunch.
And again, that's in the book Wild Mind. And I'm describing, just giving you a few examples of the kind of preparation that we need to make before we get out of the forest and get to the edge of the Grand Canyon. So it's very, very, very important. We every year we learn more that as guides, we often have to slow people down and say, you're going to really need good access to this resource that you were born with, but you need to cultivate it before we'd recommend you jump over the edge. Okay, so for the caterpillar, the preparation stage or phase is when, if it's a moth caterpillar, It's when they're spinning a cocoon for themselves. They're not in the cocoon yet, they're just spinning it. And for a butterfly caterpillar, their body actually changes into a cocoon-like thing called a chrysalis. That's preparation. Okay, so then you get to the edge of Soul Canyon and you look down and your stomach goes into your throat and you turn around and say, maybe this wasn't such a good idea. And you look into the abyss and there's dark shadows down there and you've heard stories and myths and you don't really know if you're ready. And you never feel fully ready. And what's happening for a human at that time is a lot of things, but two of them is the crisis and the call. That even though your life has been going quite well, and you've been a really healthy early adolescent for some number of years, there's something in some way that you feel life is pulling the rug out from underneath you. There's some kind of crisis that is going on in your life. It might be a loss of professional standing, as happened to Carl Jung when he had his break with Freud. And Freud didn't kick him out. Jung kicked himself out, and he had to be authentic. And that was a crisis. And then he had an affair, or second affair, with someone while he was, implication, of course, he was married to Emma. He had his affair with Tony Wolff. That was a crisis. And there were a few other crises too. But the second thing that happens when we're standing there at the edge of Soul Canyon, with the Grand Canyon example here, is that you're feeling the call, the longing to go into the depths. You're feeling soul or mystery or something calling you, and it's deeply romantic in a certain sense, or erotic. And you find you have this deep, deep longing to wander into the world in a way you never had before, and to explore the mysteries of this world, which are so much deeper and more diverse than anything we knew of in early adolescence, which was mysterious enough, like learning about sex and relationships.
And life
and
itself
so
is, kind of interesting.
Kind of interesting. The natural world, amazingly interesting.
Yeah.
But we didn't really get this other dimension of mystery until we make the passage from the oasis, that's early adolescence, to the cocoon, that's late adolescence. I call that passage confirmation. So we feel this call, and the call, we wouldn't be able to say yes to the call unless there had been a crisis that destabilizes us. And if we were merely destabilized by a crisis, but we didn't feel the call, we would have patched ourselves up and had a nice tourist view of the Grand Canyon and then moved on to some other national park or something. So when the crisis and the call, they happen together, then you start this fall. You could call it a descent into the canyon. It often feels like free fall. And what's happening for the human then is our whatever identity we had, socially, vocationally, religious faith, everything, just starts to crumble. It's a dismemberment experience. And there's something joyful about it, but it's also extremely troubling and disorienting. It helps if you know what's going on. It helps if you have a guide. But people like Carl Jung, for example, or Joanna Macy, didn't have a guide who knew what was happening to them. And for the caterpillar, what's happening during that phase, that second phase, is that its body dissolves in the chrysalis. It literally, imagine that, literally its body turns into soup. And that's why the name I've chosen for the second phase of a human's descent to soul is dissolution. We dissolve. Yeah. But it's not our body that dissolves, it's our identity.
It's such a powerful word. I really, and powerful image, really. Yeah.
Dissolution, yeah. Becoming caterpillar soup. And once the caterpillar is soup, then there are these specialized cells that have been in the caterpillar's body all along. The caterpillar, we're going to imagine, never knew about. And biologists call them imaginal cells. And it's actually a biological term because the adult of that species, either a moth or a butterfly, is known by biologists as the imago.
Yeah.
So the imaginal cells are the cells in the caterpillar that have always been imagining being an imago, which is to say, imagining flight. And these imaginal cells, they've been dormant and they've been hiding out inside the caterpillar's body because the caterpillar's immune system would destroy them immediately. Because it's like this foreign organism inside the caterpillar. So once the caterpillar is soup, then the imaginal cells wake up and they imagine flight. And that in the human, this is the third phase. This is once we're at the bottom of the canyon. And that phase is, I call soul encounter. And that's when we have an image or an experience, a glimpse of what our unique ecological niche is. And so that's soul encounter. The caterpillar is imagining a butterfly. Each human has their own unique image that poet David Whyte refers to as the truth at the center of the image we were born with. Imagine that we were actually born with this mystical image.
Really?
So the image is essentially a metaphor, because during a soul encounter, we don't actually get like a ecological description of a niche. We get a metaphor that points to that niche. That's how it works for us humans. So for me, those of you who've read my book will know that I'll make this very long story very short. I was 30 years old, and on my first vision fast, I took myself out alone into the Colorado mountains to tree line, 11,500 feet in late summer, and fasted for 4 days and nights. And on the fourth day, I had an interaction with a spruce tree and a butterfly. And I'll just say the butterfly flew towards me and actually touched my left side of my face with her wing as she went by. And I heard her say, "Cocoon weaver." And obviously I wasn't expecting that or anything like it. And it took me a while to realize emotionally, to get it, that I'd just been shown what I later came to call, following David Whyte, the truth at the center of the image I was born with, that this was showing me my unique ecological niche, but I had absolutely no idea what it meant. And that's the metaphor that I've been discovering the meaning of now for 40 years and still learning.
Really honoring that.
And, yeah. And it's not, a soul encounter is not primarily information. It's not like somebody, hands you a card and say, okay, this is what you're going to do in life, get busy. Some soul encounters don't have information at all. In fact, they're just deep movement of the psyche and the soma, and we're forever changed. And even the soul encounters that come with something that seems like information, the primary thing that happens is like being struck by lightning, and it sets up the process of the ego being reshaped from an adolescent ego to an adult ego. So back to the caterpillar, what's happening in phase 3, I already mentioned, is this imaginal cells waking up. And phase 4, which is Soul Canyon, that's like going back up the canyon wall on the other side of the canyon, I call that metamorphosis. And for the caterpillar or caterpillar soup, what's happening is the imaginal cells are now fashioning a butterfly or a moth body out of the recyclable materials of a former caterpillar. And if you think about it, that's obviously essential. If you're ever going to have a butterfly or a moth, you got to build the body, you build the structure first.
Yeah.
So notice what that clues us into, that in the human, you don't have your soul encounter, you don't have you know, in my case, it was a waking experience with a butterfly. For other people, it could be a dream, or it could be something that comes out of a ceremony they enact, or it could just be a deep intuition about the pattern their life makes that they had never seen before on a deep ecological level. There's lots, soul encounters come in lots of forms, and the having an encounter with an animal, in my case, a butterfly, is not any more common than other forms of soul encounters. But if I were to leave the cocoon stage at that point, I would be like a caterpillar soup that that just pours out of a
Climbing
ruptured
around.
cocoon,
Yeah.
and you just go splat somewhere.
Yeah.
And you'll never
Oh,
fly.
for sure. Yeah.
So the caterpillar with imaginal cells has to create this butterfly, and it takes some time. And it takes some time for a human ego, to make this journey from its adolescent identity version to an adult version. It can take years for that to happen. With guidance, I think it can easily take less than a year, but that metamorphosis stage is essential. And before we at Animas Valley Institute understood this, we were unknowingly supporting people we were guiding after they had their soul encounter to go splat. And because we were supporting them to then start figuring out, how are you going to live this image in the world? And that's too soon to ask that question. You have to stay in the metamorphosis stage while your adult ego is being shaped. And so a number of years ago, we started getting very deliberate about creating practices that help people go from soul encounter to an adult ego, which is to say, to go through this phase of metamorphosis. Then back to the caterpillar, or now it's a butterfly in a cocoon or a chrysalis or a moth. At some point, the moth and butterfly is well formed enough, and then the cocoon cracks open, or this adult being, or almost adult being, cracks open out of the cocoon, but it can't fly yet. It has to like hang out on a branch somewhere that the chrysalis cocoon had been attached to, and it has to pump fluid into its wings before those wings can flap. And then it just slowly starts practicing flapping, but it can't fly yet. It takes a little while. And that's the fifth phase of the descent. I call it enactment. And in the Soul Canyon example, it's when we've gotten up to the tableland at the rim of the canyon on the other side. And it takes some while to walk back to the village. And when we're walking back to the village, that's the enactment phase. And what we're doing is anything we can figure out to embody this new ego, to embody this image or this truth at the center of the image we were born with, in just little ways. And as to just get into the habit of being a service to the world from this new identity. And that takes some time. And only after we've done that for a while, then we go through the passage of soul initiation, which is basically when mystery says, okay, you have done well enough in creating the beginnings of an adult ego that not only knows what it was born to do, but actually has a good chance of being able to do it. And now this stage of the cocoon, which has been a mystery school, an enchanting mystery school, which is, you couldn't have hoped for more excitement in life. Then mystery says you're done with mystery school, and now you go out into the world and you serve the world.